coming to the standards meeting today. Could I call for apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from independent members Mike Lewis and Margaret Williams. Oh, he's there. They've just joined.
Oh, thank you very much. And
no, we're all right. Oh no, Oliver's, yeah. Do you want me to?
yes, please.
The rules for this committee provide that we can't have more councillors in the committee than we have lay members. So at the moment, we've got 4 councillors who have joined. We've got 2 present in the room, and Councillor Mike Lewis and Councillor Oliver James, and we have 3 lay members. So I'm just looking at you, Councillor Mike Lewis. Are you happy to drop out of this meeting? I know you have travel arrangements later on today, so I'm just wondering whether you're happy to drop out of this meeting.
Yeah, yes, Tracy, that'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I'll drop out.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. So we have equal lay to councillors. Thank you, Tracy. If I then go to item number 2, which is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest, please. I don't see anybody making any reference, so thank you very much. And again, can I ask you to look and approve the minutes of the previous meeting? If there are any issues or needs to be brought to my attention, if you could make yourself known, please. I don't see any hands raised, so I would take it then to approve the minutes. So thank you very much. Item 4, I'm going to hand over to Tracy for the member local dispute resolution protocol. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 4 starts on page 4, and it is the member local dispute resolution protocol. So this is a protocol that was heavily endorsed by both the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales and the Wales Audit Office back in 2010-2011. And there was a move at that stage for councils to adopt some sort of protocol where they could deal with low-level disputes between councillors. Swansea actually took very much of a lead on this. It was one of my predecessors who I remember turning up at a standards committee conference and actually going through what we proposed to do. And it was very much replicated then across Wales with the full endorsement of the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. But since that time, we haven't actually reviewed this protocol in Swansea, so I thought it was about time that we actually did look at it. What we actually could only find in terms of what was agreed in 2011 was the report that went to council adopting what you have at Appendix B. So we have the flowchart. That's what was implemented and adopted by council in 2011. So what I thought would be really helpful is to go with that flowchart, and I accept we may need to amend that flowchart going forward, is to put a narrative document. So you have attached at Appendix A the member local dispute resolution protocol, which goes with that flowchart. I don't intend to go through it. I'll take it that you have all read that protocol. What I have done is at paragraph 1.4, I've put in something about the group leader's duty. You are familiar with the fact that the Local Government and Elections Wales Act last year did indeed put an emphasis on the new duty for group leaders. That's something we'll come on to later when we look at the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales annual report as well. So I've put that paragraph in there to reiterate that the group leaders have this legislative duty to maintain the highest standards of ethical behaviour within their group, and that this protocol is not intended to interfere with or take the place of any internal party discipline. And then over the page, I've set out the procedure. It does involve members trying to resolve their dispute informally, perhaps with an apology. If that can't be done, then they proceed to a councillor mediation panel, which will involve the group leaders. I've had to address the fact where we may have members that are not affiliated to any political party, and also what happens if we've actually got a dispute between the group leaders. So I'm dealing with that in paragraph 3.1. You can see that I've put in a role for the presiding member. Our presiding member is Councillor Jan Curtis. I have discussed with her whether she would be happy to undertake that role, and she is happy. So paragraph 3.1 includes that role for the presiding member. Then I've put in about the councillor mediation panel and who it will consist of. Also refer to the fact that any discussion in the council mediation panel will be held in a private session and information will be confidential. And then perhaps something that you may want to consider at paragraph 4, I've actually put in potentially a role for an independent member of the Standards Committee. That role would be a supporting or advisory role to the group leaders, probably at the councillor mediation panel stage. I've put the onus on the group leaders to decide whether or not they want to invite an independent member of the Standards Committee to be involved in the process. I have to be slightly cautious about this because, of course, if the member-member dispute resolution process doesn't work and there is ultimately a referral to the Ombudsman and the Ombudsman does investigate and refers the matter back to the Standards Committee, then the lay member who's been involved at any previous stage will be unable to participate in any Standards Committee hearing should that actually happen. So again, I've referred to this being a confidential dispute resolution process with the involvement of the Standards Committee lay member. I don't think there's anything further that I can really add. I probably should highlight on page 7 that I have listed there when I would anticipate the protocol to be used. I've listed them because I actually, when I give code of conduct training to my councillors, I think every single time I've given the training, a councillor has asked if we can use this process to deal with complaints from members of the public, and we can't. So I've specifically put it in there what it can be used for and what it shouldn't be used for. So I don't think I've got anything further to add to that protocol. You're very much looking at Appendix A, whether you agree with the role or potential role of the Standards Committee lay member and just the procedure as a whole. This is just the start of the process. So this has not gone anywhere else yet. You are the first people to see this protocol, but we will be taking it through senior management team, probably a discussion with group leaders. And then because it will be a change to the constitution, it will need to go through constitution working group and it will need to be approved by full council. So we have a way to go with this document. And I'll probably, if it does get changed in the intervening consultations, then I will bring it back to the Standards Committee so you can see the final version, because it will be helpful if Standards Committee do recommend the final version to CWG and Council for full approval. So you'll see the recommendation there on page 4. I'm happy to take any questions and hopefully it's a fairly straightforward document for you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I'm not sure if anybody wishes to perhaps, Janet, I can see your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, a very interesting document, and I think it would be very helpful to everybody to have that narrative. Looking at the procedure in point 3.1, I just wondered, and again, excuse my ignorance because I'm, very new. I just wondered, for reference, whether it would be helpful when that first stage happens, if acknowledgement were to come, not to the Standards Committee, but maybe to you, Tracy, that something was going on, so that you've got just like a marker, say, that it would go to, I'm going to call it Standards, but to your office for information at that stage. The reason that I'm saying that is I thought that it would be an opportunity maybe to log the activity, to see how many are coming in before maybe the committee is called in. Now, I don't know whether that's practical or whether that's possible or legal even, but I just, as I was reading it, I thought it was something that may be a way of monitoring activity, seeing what's happening, as this is a new stage.
Thank you, Janet. I think that's a really good point, actually, and it's something that both myself and the chair discussed prior to the committee actually starting outside, or when we were sat waiting to come into the room. I'm happy to put that in, and I'll tell you why I'm happy to put that in, because if you go on a couple of agenda items, that we have got an item on the group leaders report under the Local Government Elections Wales Act. So it would be something that we'd be expecting the group leaders to report on as well. So even though there is reference to, if you get to the second stage, that both the monitoring officer and the head of DEM services become involved at that stage, I think for reporting purposes and for that assurance that group leaders can give you when they're speaking to Standards Committee or speaking to the chair, and we'll come on to that agenda item separately, that you will be asking, well, have you used this dispute resolution protocol? And if we're unaware of informal apologies going on, then perhaps it's not going to be fully reflected in the work that they're doing as group leaders. So I'm more than happy to put a reference to reporting to me or letting me know as monitoring officer that they are having those initial discussions. But it is probably something that we would urge group leaders to also include in that template report that we'll come on to later. But happy to include that, Jana. I think that's a really good point.
Thank you. And then can I go on to 3.2? If given that you're going to include that, I just wondered in the second line, it says in the event that the matter cannot be resolved informally, then the matter should be referred. And I wondered if then, if we're going to use in 3.1 the word reporting, if it should then say referred formally to the monitoring officer, so that we've got that distinction as well.
Happy to include that as well. Yes.
Thank you very much. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
If I could just call if anybody else has any issues that they may wish to ask Tracy about. Yes. Oh, Oliver?
Hi, yes, I just wanted to quickly ask asking the group leaders if they wanted an independent member of the Standards Committee to give advice. I was wondering, is that something that we would want, or that we would wait to see if all group leaders would say yes to, or could it end up in the situation where the member could be sort of advising or helping, or not, just sort of being involved with some groups, but not all groups, and could that cause any complications or issues, or are we not too concerned about that?
Right. I hadn't really thought of it as being an issue if one particular group requested standards to give an assistance. If you perceive that it could be misconstrued, then I certainly didn't see that. Perhaps could we ask others in the committee whether they felt that it should be that all. Well, it's difficult, you see, because we're saying that if you require, you can request it. We're not making it compulsory. So it's a difficult one, Oliver, very difficult. Has anybody else got a viewpoint on that? Please. Yes, by all means, Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, my view on reading that, and thanks, Oliver, for highlighting it. My view was that it's in terms of best practice that we would be encouraging, and that was why I made the point in 3.1 to encourage that dialogue, encourage that close communication. So maybe, we could maybe look at the wording to say that we would encourage all group leaders to engage with the Standards Committee, that might be a way of, encouraging that communication and building that relationship, which Tracy has talked about in the past that we're wanting to do.
Yes, I do see that word encourage as opposed to being at your discretion. So yes, thank you, Oliver. Does that make you feel a little? Yes, certainly. Sorry, Tracy.
Sorry, if I can just come in there. It is an interesting one. I thought long and hard about actually including this in there. But where I thought it might be quite helpful is in a scenario where you've got maybe two councillors who've had a spat in council, for example. This is where we're really looking to use this protocol. So they've got very passionate about what they're discussing, and maybe there's been a little bit of verbal abuse thrown around in the chamber. And actually, you might end up in a position where both the councillors are saying, I don't think I've said anything untoward, what I've been saying. And we've talked about the cases that have gone through the Ombudsman, the Adjudication Panel for Wales, about having a thicker skin, etc. You know, we might get into that type of argument between councillors. And I thought it might be really helpful, notwithstanding you might have me as a monitoring officer there, it might be really helpful if you have a lay member of the Standards Committee saying, well, actually, on balance, I don't think you should have said that. I would have been quite offended about that. So it would be having that independent person who has got the backing of the Standards Committee, who's been trained specifically in code of conduct, to be able to bring what they consider, bearing in mind all the case law around this, and bearing in mind what the code says, and bearing in mind what the Ombudsman says, it would be very helpful to have their input into the dispute resolution procedure at that stage. So it's about having that independent person there, notwithstanding that I will be there as well. So that's why ultimately I have included it, because I thought, well, it might be sensible to put it in there and let the group leaders decide whether they want to include the lay member of the Standards Committee. It may not be relevant in all particular scenarios, but in that particular one, I thought it would be really helpful.
Yeah,
Is that all right, Oliver? Does that give you satisfaction?
Yeah, sure. That context really useful. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we.
Sorry, so you can see at page 4, there is a recommendation there. Are you all happy to approve that recommendation, that it goes on, subject to the amendments that we will make, that Janet has suggested in paragraph 3.1 and 3.2. We'll make those amendments and then we'll take it through more of a consultation process with the group leaders and with the corporate management team as well. But are you all happy with that recommendation on page 4? And if so, can you just show that you are happy by a show of hands? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think an excellent, I don't need to say it, but an excellent clarified. Thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you. Okay, if I then could go on to number 5, again, it's Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Again, agenda item 5, protocol on member officer relations, starts at page 10 of your paper. Slightly longer document, but again, this is a document that I don't think has been reviewed for a number of years. Again, like the member dispute resolution process, it is in your terms of reference to have oversight of. Appendix A is the new version. Apologies that it's not a track change version of the version that is currently in our constitution, which is found at Appendix B, but there were so many changes, it really amounted to a redrafting, although parts of it are exactly the same, have just been lifted and shifted into my Appendix A. So again, I'm taking it that you've read this document. It is in our constitution, and it's very much a document which sets out the relationship that there should be between officers and councillors. Again, it builds on the code of conduct and the Nolan principles, which I know you're familiar with. It is also built on some legislation which officers are bound by, and that's referred to in subsection 4, the Code of Conduct Qualifying Local Government Employees, Wales Order 2001. And that provides that members of the public are expected and entitled to expect that the highest standard, that the officers exact the highest standards of conduct when they're performing their duties as officers. So what I have added to this document, and it's a piece of work that we've been doing over the years with cabinet members and senior management team, is the role of members and the role of officers. So I have specifically set out there with headings what the role of members is and what the role of officers is. That very much follows a piece of work that we've been doing over the last few years, and slightly prior to COVID as well. I've also added on page 15 a respect and courtesy heading. So that again, that builds on the Nolan principles of mutual respect, trust and courtesy between officers and members. I mean, you think this all goes without saying, but it's worth putting out and spelling it out in the document so that when we have particularly new officers joining the local authority, they can be referred to this protocol and they've got a better understanding, because many of our officers, particularly junior officers, don't come into contact with councillors that often. So it was just worth setting that out so that officers are aware. A lot of the next few pages are a duplication of what we previously had, so I don't intend to focus on those. I would take you to page 20. I've put in something about media, communications and media. It's a bit of an issue that sometimes crops up when we have to give media releases or press releases, who actually does the political bit and who actually does the factual bit. So I've put that in there. I've also reiterated on page 21 around confidentiality. It is found in other parts of our constitution, but I thought it worth putting in this protocol something around confidentiality, because it is so important in this authority that we are aware of what is confidential and that we don't inadvertently become subject to data breach obligations. I think that's pretty much about it. It's a fairly lengthy document. A lot of it, as I say, is a duplication from the Appendix B with some additional, and I changed some of the wording so that it reads slightly better. When I was redrafting this document, I did look at the Wales, all Wales Council Constitution that was drafted many years ago, which a lot of local authorities adopted whole scale. We didn't adopt it, so we've got bits of it. But I did go back to have a look at that because it was renewed last year in line with the Local Government Elections Wales Act. So again, it does largely follow the All Wales Model Constitution. It's always good to go back to that, so it gives you a good guide as to what many authorities are putting in their protocols. All local authorities will have this member officer protocol somewhere in their constitution. So again, I don't propose to say anything further on that. Again, this is another protocol like the member dispute resolution protocol that will go through several pieces of consultation now internally, and then when we finalised it, I'll bring it back to the Standards Committee so that you can make a recommendation to Constitution Working Group and Council that you're quite happy with it, because as I said, it is in your terms of reference. So again, happy to take any questions around it and just refer you back to page 10 where the recommendation is for the committee.
Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to ask Tracy any further questions on this particular? Janet, again, thank you.
Thanks, Tracy, and thank you for highlighting the respect and courtesy aspect. I thought that was really good. I mean, we're saying that it's taken as given that it, you know, people will realise that it does link to the Nolan principles and potentially the sort of code of conduct and other things. But I wondered if, just for reference, it might be worth putting a bit of an asterisk against it and then referring at the bottom of the document to those two things, just to remind everybody that this is what they're supposed to be doing anyway. I know that they're supposed to be, and everybody knows that, but sometimes in the day-to-day work, it can go, you know, into the background. So I just thought just a little reminder that that links directly into the Nolan principles might be useful.
Yeah, again, more than happy to do that, and I suppose I can also reflect it back to the officers code as well. I think that's worth mentioning as well. But it took me back to when I joined this authority as an officer, and I didn't have a background in local government. I was from private practice. But it is useful to have that document so that you get an understanding about what your role is, even though you may have induction training, even though you have a line manager or a supervisor to tell you this is what happens. It is useful to have this document, and we need to spell it out, you know, particularly about, you know, undue pressure, familiarity with councillors as well, not crossing that line. I agree. I think it's a really important part of this protocol, actually. Thank you, Janet.
Anybody else wish to ask any questions? Owen? No? No. Michaela? No. Yeah, thank you very much.
So we go back to page 10.
Page 10. So on page 10. Okay, so I'm confused, sorry.
So we've got the page 10, you've got the recommendation with those amendments that Janet
Yes.
has suggested. Are you all happy to approve that protocol as a standards committee? And then I'll bring it back once it's gone through further consultation. So show of hands if you're happy for that to go forward. Yeah, we can't currently see Oliver.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Sorry,
That's
just-
unanimous.
Get the sun out of my eyes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy, yet again. So we're on to item 6, I do beg your pardon, group leader duty, obviously in relation to the changes and responsibilities. Thank you.
Okay, it's me again. So this is a shorter report. You may remember last committee meeting that we did have a discussion about how we were going to, as a standards committee, make sure that when it comes to drafting our annual report next year, that we have sufficient in that annual report to discharge our duty to make sure that we're monitoring group leaders in their new duty to maintain the highest ethical standards within their group. So part of the discussion we had last time, and I did take it offline as well with both the chair and the vice chair, is in addition to you having your annual meeting with the group leaders, whether or not it would be worthwhile having some sort of template document that we'd actually ask them to fill in. So it's having really that audit trail from the group leaders as to what they've been doing to discharge their new duty. So I've put together a template. It was following discussions with the chair really that I put this together. So it's at page 36 and 37. It's very short, but it does give them an opportunity to actually put down in writing how they've complied with their duty. So as I said, this will be in addition to us meeting with them as a standards committee. We did have a discussion, if you remember, about whether it was worthwhile the chair of the committee, possibly the vice chair as well, meeting with the group leaders on a more confidential basis as well, so they could have an open and honest discussion, but not in a full committee setting. So over to you, really, whether you're happy with that template. Again, it might change going forward. Any suggestions, happy to consider. If I can just add one thing, which I was going to come on to, and I will come on to when we look at the work plan, which is the last agenda item. You will also recall that there is a move to set up an all Wales national forum for chairs of standards committee. So that will reflect best practice across Wales amongst standards committee. It is hoped, I'm missing the monitoring officer meeting this morning where I know this is going to be discussed, but I anticipate that meeting, that national forum, will be set up quite quickly, and it's anticipated that the first meeting will probably take place in November. I don't think there's much chance of it happening before then, but it will be an opportunity for chairs of standards committee to meet and discuss good practice. So it may well be that templates, etc., is something that is on the agenda. So it could be that, you know, we come back and we revisit this document. But I just wanted to have something out there so that you could consider. Obviously, if the national forum does get underway, I'll update you further on that by email. But in the meantime, happy to take any questions, any suggestions for improvement on that document. And again, there is a recommendation at page 34. So happy to take any questions. Again, Janet.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be the one kicking it off again. Thanks for mentioning the audit trail. And to add to that audit trail, I thought there needs to be on this document a date. So, you know, that we're making sure that we've got, whether it's in the top or a date there of when this activity is happening. So, you know, in the top part, if we can just say what year it is, and then the person filling in can put their date in. Looking at training, I wondered, you mentioned earlier about new members coming in and existing members. I wondered if we can differentiate between the two. So how many of the new members are being trained? How many existing members are given an update, you know, to go over it again? Because I think that is useful as well, just going over it maybe annually, just a quick update. So, that would be useful as well. I also thought that looking at your how-to in the previous document, that a how-to, although it seems to be self-explanatory, I think something to go alongside that with a narrative saying the reason that we want to do this is it's about best practice, this is how you fill it in, this is what you need to do. And I also thought that as in number 3, you've sort of got an example. It would be very useful, say in number 4, if you could give maybe other examples. We're saying, are there matters that the Standards Committee can assist in? For example, whether it's training, code of conduct, Nolan principles, just to nudge them, because if you're asking me, well, what kind of matters? I'm not sure, what should I go to? So if we can maybe not give them a steer. And then in number 2, I think, again, you can give a such as kind of just to help them through the process, because it's a new process. But I thought it was a great document. And thanks very much, Tracy. Those are my comments.
Janet, more than happy to include those as well. Very sensible suggestions. There's always a danger when you put an example, because they'll focus on that and that will be their response. So that's why sometimes I don't always put examples in, but I think you're absolutely right. And it is something, when you were talking about particularly box 4, training code of conduct, it took me back to when we actually do interview the group leaders, and they very much do focus on things like that, that we always end up, I think, with the question, what more can we do for you? And
yes.
Usually the focus of the group leaders there is around, well, training, ongoing training, etc. So that usually is picked up then. But yeah, more than happy to include those very sensible suggestions, Janet.
Thank you, Tracy. My question again is on the training page. There's quite a bit of information you require in there from the group leaders, especially the group leader with a large group. And my question is, doesn't the council already hold this information?
We do, and we've been monitoring it as well. So I've been having regular updates from Dem Services Committee as to which councillors have undertaken training and what training they've actually undertaken. So my proposal was, I wasn't expecting the group leaders to sit down with all of their members and ask them specifically what training they have, but we will be circulating the information that we have in Dem Services to all the group leaders to say, these are all the training, this is all the training your group have undertaken. There may be some gaps, so we will be expecting the group leader in this document to be reflecting on that and saying what they're doing in respect of those gaps.
Sorry, just to add to that, it's the role of the Democratic Services Committee to be monitoring training, and they will be having reports on this matter.
That's what I was going to suggest, that rather than wait for this document to be agreed, that the group leaders are told, look, there are certain members in your group who have not taken an awful lot of training. And I look at myself for that as well.
But equally thinking about what Janet said about the log of issues that arise, that would also highlight perhaps a training need, wouldn't it? So I see this as being a follow-on from disputes. Yes, thank you. Anybody else want any relevant questions? No? No? Okay.
So page 34, we have the recommendation there. So again, with the amendments that have been put forward, are you all happy for that document with the amendments to be sent at some stage to the group leaders? But as I say, the caveat to all of this is whether or not when that national forum meets, I'm sure there will be a discussion around what our authorities doing to make sure that when it comes to drafting their annual report, they can put something in there about what they've done to discharge their duties. Yes. So it may be that document might change because there might be better practice out there. So are you all happy with that document going forward? Show of hands, all in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very, very relevant, as you said, because simply because you've identified it, it could well be that when you put it all together so that it can be measured on behalf of Wales in total, it might need to be uniform. Yeah, thank you. It's the Tracy show, so we go back to number 8, please, Tracy.
We're on agenda item 7, actually. This is the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales Annual Report and Accounts 21-22. I'd just like to say thank you to Alison, who put this report together. Fairly lengthy report from the Ombudsman, as always. A lot of that report doesn't relate to Standards Committee terms of reference, but it talks about complaints generally that have been referred to the Ombudsman. If I can turn to page 79, that is the part of the report that specifically relates to the Standard Committee, because this talks about complaints under the Code of Conduct. The good news is that there were fewer Code of Conduct complaints than last year, but it was higher than the year before that. And again, the Ombudsman is seeing the majority of complaints being from town and community councils. So nothing seems to change there. About half of the new complaints related to failure to show equality and respect. But again, the good news is that was slightly lower than the previous year. In relation to respect, the Ombudsman had categorised as a lower level a number of those complaints where they recommended local resolution. And again, just to highlight to you, because we've already talked about the member dispute resolution process, it is the position that if there is a complaint to the Ombudsman about another member, so member complaint, if the Ombudsman receives that complaint, they will probably telephone me and say, well, have you taken this through your member dispute resolution process, rather than deal with it straight off. So they are expecting those low-level member disputes to be resolved at local level. The allegations or the complaints relating to equality tend to be the more serious complaints that the Ombudsman has to deal with, and they usually involve allegations of bullying and harassment. And in relation to Code of Conduct referrals, the Ombudsman's been quite open and said that they only investigate a small proportion of complaints that they do actually receive. Again, that's been a bit of a trend that we have seen over the years. But saying that, in 2021-22, the Ombudsman made 11 referrals to the Standards Committees in Wales and 9 referrals to the Adjudication Panel in Wales. That was twice as many as the previous year, and the highest number of referrals that the Ombudsman Office has actually made since 2012-2013. I think it's also worth noting that all of those referrals to either the Standards Committee or the Adjudication Panel of Wales were all upheld by those respective Standards Committee and Adjudication Panels. And then finally, I'd just like to refer you to page 86, where the Ombudsman specifically references the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, and the new duty on town and community councils to make and publish a plan about training provision for members and staff of those community councils. Now that's interesting, because we have had discussions that Shane Margaret isn't with us today, because Margaret is usually very vocal around this, about what training is offered to community and town council members. So very welcome piece of legislation around making sure that town and community councils actually come up with a training plan. And we will be looking at that. We have circulated, I think last week, no? Okay, we are in the process of circulating a letter to all Swansea town and community councils, asking them to send us their training plans. The training plans have to be published by the 5th of November. I'm not proposing to trawl through all the websites to find them, so we have asked the clerks to send them the training plans, and that will be in your work plan after Christmas. that we will be looking to see what sort of training is being offered and provided to town and community councils. Also, you'll note at the bottom of page 86 that the Ombudsman is specifically welcoming the additional responsibilities of the group leaders to promote good standards of behaviour within their councils. So I don't propose to say anything further on that. There is reference, sorry, I should reference the note again on page 86 to Richard Penn's work. You did have a report last year. Yeah. Around the work that Richard Penn has been doing, but it looks as though that will also be continuing depending on when Welsh Government choose to prioritise that. So nothing further to add. That is the annual report for 21-22. It's a for information report, so there's no decision that needs to be made.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I found it a very interesting observations. Not reading all of it, but picking out the parts that I know we've had issues with and discussions, and I'm particularly pleased on the training scheduled for community councils when we look at what the mix of the actual referrals to the Ombudsman. So yes, I'm very pleased to see that. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 8 is just an update on the code of conduct complaints that are currently with the Ombudsman. So you'll see the 3 there, where the Ombudsman is not investigating, but there is one there relating to the Mumbles Community Council. It's a complaint from a member of the public, and the Ombudsman is investigating that complaint. So we will be watching that as to whether or not it is ultimately referred back to the Standards Committee, or depending on the nature of the complaint, whether it goes to the Adjudication Panel for Wales. But clearly I will update you when I hear further from the Ombudsman in relation to that. And then moving on to the last item, the work plan for 22-23. So we've dealt with the Officer Member Relations Protocol, Member Dispute Resolution Protocol today. The next meeting will be 20th of January, unless there is something that intervenes and we need to call another Standards Committee. We will be looking at the annual meeting with the group leaders. We'll also be looking at the training that I've just referenced for community and town councils. And you may recall that we also decided that we'd look at the dispensation form because councillors find it quite difficult to fill in. So I'll bring that back to the committee on the 20th of January as well. And then we've got, I won't go on to March, but we've got reference to social media whistleblowing and the indemnity scheme, which I'll bring a report to. So unless there's anything specific that you want added to the work plan, I think with the annual meeting with the group leaders, it's probably going to be a fairly lengthy meeting on the 20th of January. So nothing further to say about that work plan.
Just briefly, going back to the training for community town councillors. I know they've only got until the 5th of November to get that piece of work in place. It's probably worth noting that the guidance from One Voice Wales was only sent to them last week. So they will feel they're up against it themselves because they haven't had much time to look at the guidance and to meet their statutory deadline.
Yes, I presume that they will have sufficient time to have given it some due thoughts. Otherwise, yes, it's difficult to say anything about that, Hugh, isn't it, if they're working within a time frame. But thank you for noting that. Thank you. I believe that's the total, yes?
Before we go, sorry, apologies from me. I should have introduced everyone to Councillor Rabaiotti. And welcome him to his first Standards Committee meeting. So apologies we didn't do that at the start, but welcome. Better late than never. But can I just mention to the committee, this is probably Jill's last Standards Committee meeting. It will be. So Jill's term of office ends on the 18th of October. We don't have another Standards Committee planned prior to that date. And I'd just like to express my gratitude and thanks to Jill for all the hard work that she's put into both vice chairing and chairing the Standards Committee. Jill has been with us, was appointed to the Standards Committee on the 19th of October 2012. So she's been with us for 10 years. A lot of that time was as vice chair or chair. So it's been a pleasure working with Jill over the years, and I'm really grateful for all the work and effort that you've put into the Standards Committee and all our discussions about the agendas as well. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure the committee would also like to say thank you to Jill for all her hard work over the 10 years that she's been a member of the Standards Committee.
And I'm really pleased to be able to see so much of the issues that we've tried to wrestle with actually being pulled together, which I think will give not only the people that participate, but will make Swansea City Council an exemplar again. It is always a delight, so I have to say thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Trace. And that, in fact, brings the meeting to a close. So thank you very much. Nice to have met you all. Thank you.